Did you see Coach K called the student reporter who he berated? I don't know if berated is too strong of a term.
Too strong.
He was pretty terse with the student reporter whose
There's
name,
the word.
I believe, is Jake Piazza. According to Jake Piazza's column in the Duke Chronicle, the student newspaper, Mike Krzyzewski called him Saturday night and apologized to him. I think this kid should have been calling Coach K to thank him. If Coach K would have said, I think we can start closing out in shooters a little harder. I think maybe start hedging ball screens and then we can turn this thing around. It would have been a reasonable but very forgettable moment in this kid's life. Instead, he goes viral and immediately becomes the #1 student reporter in the country. I don't think you could argue that. I know there's a few kids who you're really high on this year coming out of college, but Jake Piazza is probably the #1 pick in the student journalism draft.
Here's where Coach K was wrong. No one cares what Jake Piazza did on his econ test. People do care about Duke basketball, and they do care if Duke wins or loses. Nice to meet you, though, Jake.
This is Basketball Friends. He's Matt Tait. I'm Nick Schwerdt. KU now in the midst of a 3-game losing streak. This is just an occurrence that takes place every 8 years. Haley's comment, presidential elections, and KU 3-game losing streaks. I kind of wondered if the loss to Oklahoma on Saturday would have been the tipping point for him to sort of start calling out this team, questioning their toughness. I don't know if this team has it in them. In all the comments we've heard publicly from him, he's been pretty glass half full, which has been a little bit surprising, and I'm wondering why that is.
The post-game press conference after that Oklahoma loss, it took 30, 40 minutes for him to even get to us, right? And normally that's something they try to get to pretty quick, and it's a quick meeting in the locker room, and then he's got plenty of time with his team after that, obviously.
What do you think that moment was like? What do you think those 30 minutes after the game were like in that locker room?
You know, based on this team, I don't think he was pounding his fist on a locker. I don't think he was yelling and screaming. I don't think any of that's really going on yet. I mean, Bill Self's demanding, he's tough, he's on these guys when they don't make the right defensive switch, things like that. But I don't think he's lighting these guys up. And you know, he's always been the first to jump in front of a microphone and talk to his team through the media, right?
Yeah.
But we haven't heard a whole lot of that this year. Instead of calling them soft or calling out their defense, Self has carried a mostly encouraging tone this season. If there's one thing Self does better than push buttons, it's read people. And he knows that building this team up is much better than tearing them down, I think. This team does not have the Morris twins, Tyshawn Taylor. This team does not have that East Coast flavor where these kids can just thrive when they're called out like that. It's different, and Self knows that, and so I think he's treating them differently.
He knows the roster that he has. He knows the team that he has. And if you gotta go back and sort of take inventory, when KU was 8-1, and you sort of look at it in retrospect, and I feel like you maybe have a different opinion on this team and how they were actually playing at the time. I mean, Jalen Wilson had to score 21 points in the second half for you to come back against a Kentucky team that is not sniffing the NCAA tournament this year. You trailed for most of the second half against North Dakota State. You needed 2 big plays by Tyon Grant Foster, of all people, in crunch time just to come back and beat a then winless team. Against Creighton, Jalen Wilson fouls Marcus Zegarowski on a game-tying 3-point attempt. He goes to the line, makes the first 2, misses the third that would have forced overtime. By the way, Marcus Zegarowski, an 82% free throw shooter this year. Versus Texas Tech, you had Big Dave attempting a turnaround 14-foot jumper with 3 guys on him with 14 seconds left. You get lucky because the ball literally bounces off Mac McClung's head, goes out of bounds. Bill Self draws up a beautiful baseline out-of-bounds play, gets Ochai Agbaji a wide-open layup. Then you've got the OU game where you just got big shots down the stretch from Jalen and Big Dave, and you get the win. Listen, you won all those games, and that's why you were being ranked as a top 5 team in the country. But it's not a sustainable or reliable way to string together wins across the course of a season, especially in the Big 12. You were in large part playing average basketball then. You're playing average basketball now. The only difference is you're losing those coin flip games. I think it's just kind of him looking at it saying, I've had the same team for the first 2 months of the season, and we're not really showing any progress or trending in the direction that would make me think if I simply light a fire under this team's butt, all of a sudden they're going to turn it around.
I think he's very, very sympathetic to the situation that these guys are in. And he talked about that a little on his Hawk Talk show. He's talked about it all season. These guys are isolated. They don't go out. They don't hang with friends. They don't go to the bars. They don't go to eat. They don't go to movies. They don't run around. They are in their rooms or in the practice gym. Self said the other night, even the assistant coaches, we get to go home. We get to see our kids. These guys don't do that, man. Their interaction outside of their team is whoever's in their headset when they're playing Call of Duty or 2K. That's probably part of it too. I mean, if this were a non-COVID year, if this were a normal year, he might try to fire these guys up a little bit more. But I think he's being sympathetic to, we're just happy to be playing basketball and we're just going to keep trying and keep doing the best we can. And I don't think that makes him soft. I don't think that makes them soft. I think it's just their reality. And everybody's kind of trying to embrace it. Bill Self believes they have to play better. They're not playing as well as he'd like. If they don't start doing that, is it the end of the world? I don't think it is to him.
After the game on Saturday and then on the radio show earlier this week, Bill Self hinted, more than hinted, alluded to, we could be looking at some lineup changes, but he wasn't super specific on what he was looking for and what could be changing. He did mention energy, though. Do we have any favorites in the clubhouse who we should be expecting to take on bigger roles moving forward?
A lot of people have talked about DeJuan Harris getting in there, Mitch Lightfoot getting in there. I think those are your only real options. And I think they'll only be in there if they continue to give the energy that he wants to see. And more importantly, if the others aren't. If the starting five showed up in practice this week and gave the best energy, I don't think Bill Self would change it because he is just trying to, again, reach these guys like we talked about earlier. Let's clean slate this thing. Let's start over. Let's see who my best five most competitive dudes are, because that's what it comes down to for Self in Kansas right now. If you compete, you'll play.
I would be shocked if DeJuan Harris does not have a much more significant role moving forward. He is the one getting others involved, finding the open man on the perimeter. It's bad, though, when you're just looking at every guy on the bench and saying, what's up with it, Santaruna cat? He's got some length, right? Pretty athletic. I feel like we are a week away from diving into the per 40 numbers on Chris Tehan, right? 6'4", quick release. And I know he's a walk-on, but his true shooting percentage numbers are off the chart. When's this guy going to start getting some more run?
We are not at the Chris Tehan thing. And look, Chris Tehan...
I wouldn't be too sure about that. All right, it's time for another edition of the number one game on Basketball Friends. Name that player. The rules are simple. I will give you a quote from Bill Self in which he's talking about a former or current KU basketball player. Matt, it is your job to tell me which player Bill Self is talking about. You are 0-2 on the season, looking to get that elusive first win. Here is your quote for today. He is the most talented kid I have ever worked with. He may be the nicest kid I have ever worked with. Name that player.
Oh my gosh. Two come to mind. Probably neither right. Staring 0-3 in the face here. I'm going to go with Perry Ellis.
That is incorrect. The answer we were looking for, Matt, was Ben McLemore.
Oh.
I felt like coupling most talented with nicest was sort of like I'm giving you two hints on this one. I'm not trying to crush you here, man. In the spirit of Bill Self staying positive this season, I'm trying to stay positive with you because I know you're laboring. I know you're giving it your all. I kind of felt like I gave you a layup today.
I mean, you can count on one hand the number of players that have come through Kansas that you would say may be the nicest, right?
Okay, so what's the starting lineup of the all-time nice guys? Because Mitch is your big guy down low. Maybe Landon Lucas. If you want to go all big, put Perry at the 3. I don't know what sort of style of play you're looking to go with here.
Devontae Graham, right?
Yeah, Devontae's at the point.
Pretty easy.
Ben at the 2.
Yeah, that's a pretty good team.
Put Mitch at the 5, Perry at the 4, and now we just need a third guard.
The first time that I got to cover Malik Newman was in Italy. After some sightseeing thing one day, we got Malik real quick before they got on the bus. He gave his thoughts. It was pretty cool. He was friendly. The rest of the trip, I got Malik Newman after every event. He kept going, "Oh, this again." And I said, "You did it to yourself, man. You were too good. You were too nice. You were too friendly. So you did it to yourself." So Devontae, Malik, and Macklemore with Perry and Mitch. You're not the biggest team, but today you don't have to be the biggest team.
Malik Newman, the only KU player to date who shook my hand after a press conference. I guess I was just asking an immaculate line of questions. So yeah, round of applause for me today. Congrats to me. Me and Jake Piazza asking the best questions.